Mike Bloomberg is sitting on a number of past comments and actions during his time as mayor of New York that are absolutely horrendous and deserve scrutiny, particularly as he's rising in the polls in numerous states. One hasn't been talked about much to this point, and that is his active encouraging of the widespread long-term spying in New York City on a number of different individual Muslims as well as Muslim communities and groups in the years after 9/11. And so he was finally asked about that during an interview with NPR. We've got a few little excerpts from that. Here's the first.
You said later the surveillance was justified in order to keep the country safe, but there have been independent reviews since that showed not a single arrest was made.
Well, that's
that could
good.
be attributed to this surveillance.
Okay, but number one, remember, you're talking about right after 9/11 when everybody was petrified about another terrorist attack. We were super careful to always obey the law. Number one, it's the right thing to do, and number two, you knew people would be looking at it. We had just lost 3,000 people at 9/11. Of course we're supposed to do that.
Okay, so the moral argument that he's making is reprehensible. The legal reference he makes to everybody says it was okay is 100% not correct, as we're gonna get to. But that clip reminded me so much of his approach to stop and frisk that, you do what you gotta do, and yeah, we never found anything. It was a horribly inefficient, terrible program, but it didn't affect me or anyone I know, so who cares why you're getting so worked up about it?
Yeah, and he didn't even just keep the investigations in New York City, in the 5 boroughs. He did it in the tri-state area, which is New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. That is a huge scope of investigative reach that a mayor should not have. Once again, he is testing the limits, or in fact, exceeding them very much so as a mayor of the powers of as mayor. He did it all the time as well under stop and frisk. The boundaries of the law don't mean much to him. And when you said the phrase, you do what you gotta do, it reminded me also of his presidential run. He will pour as much money as he needs to into how many states. He's gonna do what he feels he needs to get done to get the result that he wants, which is to buy the presidency. He doesn't really care about testing the limits of what is acceptable, what is moral, what is legal when he was the mayor of New York City. And this Muslim surveillance, which was over 250 mosques, schools, community centers, just regular people trying to live their lives. He didn't really care. We're just gonna do that just to give the appearance of safety. And I would love if someone from back in the day just said, well, the Japanese, they attacked us at Pearl Harbor. We did what we had to do. We interned all of them. What was I gonna do? What was I gonna do? That's his argument. So you're just gonna do away with civil liberties, people's rights as human beings just because of fear. That's emotional leadership.
Yeah.
That's not rational, decent leadership.
Yeah, and the comparisons to stop and frisk are really robust. I'm scared, the targets aren't me, who cares, honestly? And all your sense of rights, whether it's privacy rights or honestly the rights to your life to not be slammed up against.
Not even sense of rights. It's like the most founding principled rights.
Yeah, those are gone if he feels nervous.
Pretty sure it's in the top 5 amendments. All of these things that he violated as mayor.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Okay, so that statement that you saw, as well as the rest of his interview, was responded to by the director of the ACLU's National Security Project, Hina Shamsi, who said, "This is an insulting attempt to rewrite the history of an unconstitutional surveillance program that left Muslims, particularly in communities of color, devastated. It took brave Muslims and their supporters to go to court before the NYPD finally agreed to reforms to safeguard communities in New York and beyond. And no court ever said that the NYPD's discriminatory surveillance program under Bloomberg was lawful." And so just a reminder, right there, he said, everybody said it was fine. In the same way that when asked recently about stop and frisk, he says, oh, it kind of got out of hand, but when we realized that, we cut it by 90%. As if he was concerned about whether it was legal or constitutional, and as if he had actually instituted that he had been the one to stop it. It wasn't true with stop and frisk. He's wrong about the legality supposedly being demonstrated. Really fast, let me run through a couple of bits of info about the surveillance. In 2011, the AP NYP published a series of articles outlining the gathering of intelligence by the NYPD on over 250 mosques, student groups, and more. The department collaborated with the CIA to deploy undercover agents, as well as placed informants in mosques and kept tabs on just about everybody. NPR reported that an undercover police officer once accompanied a group of Muslim college students on a whitewater rafting trip. I actually remember TYT covering that years and years ago. As Emma alluded to, in 2007, they actually targeted Muslims in Newark, New Jersey without the authorization from Cory Booker, who was inconveniently the city's mayor at the time, but he can be ignored. We can just go in because we're nervous again. Now, thankfully in 2018, Hassan versus City of New York, a lawsuit filed by civil rights organization Muslim Advocates, reached a landmark settlement. The first ever case brought forth by Muslims who were surveilled under the NYPD's programming. The settlement required that the NYPD stop all suspicionless surveillance activities on the basis of religion or ethnicity. By the way, the settlements came after the AP won a Pulitzer Prize for that reporting we talked about. At the time of that investigation, the NYPD was still denying that the spying program existed, and at that point had existed for years and years. But to hear Bloomberg tell it, it was totally fine, everyone loved it, it was never wrong. Why would we hide it? We knew it was right to do, and we knew people would be checking. We didn't lie about it for years and years and years and years until we were finally forced by a court to stop.
Talk about another parallel to stop and frisk.
Exactly.
He was forced by a court in 2015 to stop and frisk, and what do you know? Now he's saying, oh, I did away with stop and frisk, 95% of them after, or just by my own volition. A judge made you. Yeah. Same thing we're looking at here, even though he's defending it even less here. What do you mean? He's defending he's not defending stop and frisk anymore, but he's just being like, yeah, we kind of had to do this because Muslims have no power in this country, and all of the media really treats them with just a despicable amount of contempt. But also when we're talking about settlements, it reminded me, I don't know if we've talked about it on the show, Bloomberg fought the Central Park Five for years and years from getting settlements from the city for being wrongfully imprisoned for that horrific crime that they were imprisoned for.
Yeah.
So we're talking about parallels with Trump.
That's a pretty strong one.
Pretty strong one.
Yeah.
Bloomberg made sure that even though these 5 boys, their lives were destroyed, years and years taken from them, trauma inflicted upon them, wrongfully convicted, their entire childhoods gone. Bloomberg fought them nickel and dimed them to make sure they were unable to get settlements that they deserved. Yeah. And now he doesn't really care about money. He's not fiscally conservative with his own money because he's spending and trying to buy this election. But when it came to doing the right thing in New York and actually helping out these kids, now adults, no, he wasn't gonna do that either.
Yeah. Before we end, I wanna say a couple of my fears related to this story. One is that I fear that even if this is being discussed, if thankfully NPR asked about it, maybe a question will be asked at a debate, but probably not, because the American people, even in the best of times, don't really care about their privacy rights. They don't expect any right to privacy, and in particular, if the surveillance is on the Muslim community, for a lot of Americans, that is not going to be a priority. Bloomberg may be the worst in this area potentially, but a lot of Americans are perfectly happy to go along with demonizing that community. I mean, we saw that for years and years, probably up until and including today. And I will say, when you look at his approach to this, stop and frisk, his comments about the NSA, of course they should be reading all of your emails. I don't think that maybe Trump, but other than Trump, we've never experienced a politician as openly disrespectful towards any sense that you have rights from intrusions in your life, being spied on, all of that. The idea that he might expand federal power in that area, he's salivating for it. As Emma alluded to, he didn't feel constrained by the requirements, the power that he had as mayor. He went beyond that. If he was president, any sense that you have any rights would be utterly gone. The CIA, it would be everywhere. And I think that he has a track record, unlike any other politician, to cause those fears.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, Jayar. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.